how much it's going to cost the developer to build the facilities in dollars per kilowatt, right?
Rephrase your question.
If Dominion were going to consider purchasing from somebody, you wouldn't just want to know how much it was going to cost the developer to build the facility. You would want to know how much they're going to sell you the energy for.
That's correct.
So you don't have any idea how much these solar developers might have offered their energy and capacity for, do you?
We know what our actual PPAs with, I don't know if we have PPAs with all of these or not. We certainly, the 147, now up to 300, a little over 300, we know what we are paying for the capacity and energy for those projects.
And going back to our discussion of the statute, I think we agreed that the statute now requires utilities such as Dominion who are seeking CPCNs to demonstrate that they considered and weighed alternatives.
It does, yes.
Great. I want to ask you about your understanding of the word alternative. And I put on the screen a definition of alternative found in Webster's dictionary. Would you agree with this definition of alternative, that alternative is something that can be chosen instead of something else?
That's what it says.
So Dominion couldn't have chosen any of the solar projects listed in your Schedule 1 as opposed to Dominion, could it?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Dominion couldn't have chosen to enter into a PPA with any of these.
Well, we are entering into PPAs with a number of those. We have entered into PPAs with a number of those.
We're talking about what's on the screen in your Schedule 1.
That's right, and a number of these we have PPAs with.
Could Dominion have chosen any one of these projects as an alternative to building a 20 megawatt?
We offer an avoided cost schedule, and then the projects can elect to sign up on that to sell their energy and capacity at that rate.
Now, you talked with Mr. Jaffe about the Amazon solar project, capital costs of $1,875 per megawatt hour.
Again, probably not all inclusive.
Based on public reports, $18.75 per kilowatt hour, correct?
So there was, this gets into confidential data, but there is a discovery response that we provided to you that has correspondence to that developer. It would suggest that the actual total project cost is higher than the 150.
Okay. And Your Honor, we may need to get into confidential session in a moment here, but I have just a couple more questions for Mr. Gaskill on public record. Now, Mr. Gaskill, you said, your interpretation of the law is that Dominion is not required to do an RFP in its consideration of alternatives.
We have to consider and weigh third-party market alternatives. It is not prescriptive in how you do that. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There are certainly situations where an RFP is appropriate. There are other situations where that is not necessarily a great way to do things. I think this is one of these cases.
Now, did Dominion do an RFP for the construction contract here?
I believe we did, yes. Mr. Mitchell can discuss that. But
And you did an RFP for the construction contract to make sure that you got the best price, right?
right, yeah. The difference here is when we're looking back in December, January timeframe when we're developing this project, there really wasn't a market for utility scale solar in Virginia. One of the prerequisites for doing an RFP or an effective RFP, you got to have projects out there to actually go out and act. To our knowledge, and looking at the PJM queue and the interconnection queue, and as well as utility scale developers that have purchased the Amazon, what is now the Amazon project, was really the only Virginia-based utility scale project that was viable. And that's not even in our load service territory. So really when we start thinking to do an RFP when there's not an active solar market, doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we did is we looked at the actual PPAs that we have in the North Carolina service territory, which is very active, it's very transparent. They file the capital cost, we have the actual PPA dollars that we are signing on there. So to us, that made a much better, for this situation, this made a much better market alternative than to do an RFP when there are no market alternatives to solicit. As Mr. Rogers said earlier, we do have plans. Now that we're starting to see the solar market mature in Virginia, and we're starting to see development projects, it then makes sense to go out and do an RFP for subsequent projects.
But you agree, as we discussed earlier, that the commission said CPCN applicant no longer has the option of trying to prove its case without evidence of consideration of actual third-party alternatives.
And we have provided evidence of actual third-party market alternatives.
You have provided,
With 300
Your Honor,
megawatts.
if I could ask that the witness be allowed an opportunity to respond.
We have 300 megawatts of actual third-party PPAs that we are contracted, we are buying their energy and capacity from solar facilities.
Mr. Gaskill, are you telling us for the record that the company could have chosen any one of those PPAs as a substitute for Remington?
I'm telling you that they represent actual third-party PPAs.
My question
And
was,
therefore the price of solar in the market.
my question was, could the company have chosen any one of those PPAs as a substitute for the Remington facility?
It's possible.
Your Honor, I think that's all the questions I have, and I don't think we'll need to go into confidential session.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President. Mr. Rusi.